Well, David, what a game it was on Friday night. 3,500 at the Coleraine showgrounds. Glentoran were 1-0 down at half time against Coleraine. That man Jordan Stewart popped up with 2 goals, and the Glens won 2-1. And it brings us to a big question, and that is, are Glentoran genuine title contenders this season? Could this be the year that the Glens lift the Gibson Cup for the first time since 2009?
Overwhelmingly, yes. Traditionally, back in the day, I remember as a player, and even when I was managing Linfield, we would have found it difficult at Coleraine, and yet it was always a venue, and whether it's perception or fact, where Glentoran always did particularly well. What was impressive was the second half performance. Coleraine certainly with a better side, first half. But it was as if something just switched with Glentoran on the Friday night, and they were much more aggressive, had much more intent, really went after Coleraine. And then Jordan Stewart, outstanding. And I remember actually with affection when we talked about Jordan going back, and I wrote about it in my column, about him going, back to Glentoran, and people maybe looked at his Linfield past and thought, well, why is he coming back? And I remember saying, listen, if this young man goes out and plays to the best of his ability, and produces, then the naysayers will quickly disappear. The keyboard warriors will no longer be found, and they will come to appreciate the wonderful, superb talent that he is. So Glentoran, for me, are most definitely going to be title contenders. I know in the past, maybe Keith, people would have said that things would have maybe blown up for them at various stages, and ultimately maybe they talked too much about what they were going to do rather than what they hoped to do, or say absolutely nothing. But I've got to say that even the other week when I was over working at the Big Two game, there was a different feel about the place. Declan Devine really has, very tightly talked about wanting to change the culture, wanting to change the perception. Couple of players who really are jumping out. Patrick Hoban, he looks really tasty, and alongside young Jordan Jenkins, Hoban has all of the brains, all of the craft, all of the experience. There's just an innocence about Jordan Jenkins, and his pace frightens the life out of you. And I think the other two players I want to pinpoint, James Singleton.
Mm-hmm.
James has come back. I don't think people realised how pivotal James's contribution to Glentoran was, and then young Mills in goals has come in and is doing tremendously well. So, in one word, yes, Glentoran for me are going to be title defenders, and I do not see them this time blowing up. Massive game for them now, and we'll talk about it in a wee minute. Against Larne, but they have had a tremendous start.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we did our first show of the year, and we did our season preview, and Stephen sat across where you are today, Stephen Bickham, and he said Glentoran have to be title contenders. I was sat on this side of the table thinking, well, do they really? Because, I mean, they've lost Cody Lyons-Foster, who was in the team of the year, fantastic centre-back. Daniel Giolai, goalkeeper of the year last year. That's going to be difficult to replace. Fuad Souley, a very unique player in Irish League terms. 3 massive names that they lost, and if anything, I expected maybe Glentoran to drop off a little bit and for a BOL for them to get going, but they look better now than they were this time last year, and they've kicked on, and they actually, you wouldn't say, for example, that they've directly replaced Fuad Souley, but they found a different way to play, and they look better than what they were a few months ago.
So, Keith, I'm not wanting to be in any way controversial, but I don't think that the players that you have named were as big a loss as what you may think. And here's the reason why. Because while they were there, Glentoran didn't deliver. Now, yes, they may have gotten the team of the year. Individually, they may have done fantastically well. But as a collective, Glentoran weren't successful with them being about the place. So, I was waiting to see how things are going to develop. And yes, it's early days. But the players that I've mentioned, another player, Josh Kelly, who's come back in and has been reinvented, so to speak. Everyone's making a contribution, and for me, there's a collective determination to carry this on.
I mean, interestingly, we touched about Cody Lyons-Foster there. Of course, he played for Coleraine on Friday night. He scored the opening goal. He sort of, he signalled to the Glentoran fans, That fairly came back and haunted him.
Yeah, well, I watched that and I thought, is there any need for that? And he maybe thought, we're going to roll on and stroll through this. Well, after young Jordan Stewart scored 2 unbelievable goals, and I don't know whether you've seen the wee clip of the bit of skill out on the right hand side where he nutmegged, I think it was him, nutmegged the player with the back heel. He was in tremendous form, but I think Mr. Cody Lance Foster will maybe be reminded the next time that he plays against Glentoran not to be making such or not to be celebrating in such a way after scoring, because the Glentoran faithful certainly didn't let him off with it.
You talked about Jordan Stewart there. I laughed at when he scored. I think it was the winning goal. A Glentoran fan ran onto the pitch and planted a big kiss on the side of it. I was thinking, that's the sort of thing you do, David.
Well, listen, I'm going to put my cards on the table. I've known Jordan for a long time, and I just love the young man as a person, never mind as a footballer. He's had his own challenges, his own difficulties, which he has not been behind the door in sharing. And I've often said to him, I said, if he can get himself absolutely right, and physically, mentally, emotionally, for me, he probably is right up there with Joel Cooper in terms of the talent that he has. But it was going to be about, could he keep fit? Could he continue to contribute? Interestingly, he started the season really well. Lots of people talked about his performance. Then he had a little injury. Declan left him out. He was in the bench a couple of games. Then he goes in and starts again. So he's being taken care of in a way. And the young man is absolutely flying. But I thought it rather ironic when the supporter came on, had a big smacker, right, on him. And I'm sort of thinking, yeah, where's all these people now who are absolutely hammering the life out of them? And I thought, if he delivers, and I said it to you, if he delivers, then he will be appreciated.
Yeah, I'm pleased for him in the sense that I never doubted that he could overcome those critics and those people who were criticising him. That's one of those things that's part and parcel, I think, of being an Irish League footballer. And particularly if you're someone who goes from Glentoran to Linfield and back to Glentoran, you're always going to get a bit of criticism. That's the nature of it. But I wondered if you would never doubt his talent, because it's unquestionable, but could he reach those levels that we saw a few years ago? I wasn't sure he still had that in him, but by goodness, he really does. He was in top form, and he is one of those players, a little bit like Joel Cooper, maybe a little bit like Jamie Glacken, who gets people excited and you enjoy watching football when he's on form and on the ball.
His mindset, I think, Keith, would have been, this is my last chance, of been to Glentoran, I've gone to Swindon Town, I've come home, to Linfield. I've had, a very successful time while I've been there. Things then didn't go as well at the latter end. I tried to reinvent myself at Crusaders. That didn't work out. This is my last chance. And I think he has grasped that challenge. And that, for me, that has been his motivation. But there's obviously no doubt that there's been good, sound management, behind that, in terms of encouraging, in terms of looking after him. So he's been magnificent, and I've got to say, I'm absolutely thoroughly delighted for him.
We can't really talk about Glentoran winning the league title if we don't talk about their main opposition. We've touched upon Coleraine. Although they got lost on Friday night, they're still an excellent team.
Of course they are. The one thing that Rory has done, he's been very decent in saying there already was the nucleus of a good squad here. He's not going in and talking about having rebuilt Coleraine. He says there was a good group of players already here, which he has added to. And given the quality of the players that he has there, Keith, then me being one, and others who are saying, yes, of course you should be titling or challenging for the league title, but it just doesn't happen overnight. It does take time. Earlier in the season, I watched Coleraine at Cliftonville, and certainly on the day they didn't do enough to win it. A draw was a fair result. But there was just how they went about their game. Patching, for me, is so impressive. Glacken, I've always liked. There are several other players. Matthew Shevham, you think of the contribution that he's made. They look a proper side. So, but they're still gelling. They're still coming together. So they will be there or thereabouts. Here's the key thing for them, is how they respond. The best teachers of the lot or Linfield Football Club.
Mm.
And you've only got to go as recently as last year, or as recently as last week, when they were beaten at Ballymena United, and Ballymena United most definitely deserved to win the game. But how did Linfield respond against Glenavon? They went out and they got back on the track again. A good solid victory. So for me, part of the development and the learning will be to Coleraine. Yep, we did well first half. Glentoran were better second half over the piece. Yep, Glentoran deserved it. So how do we respond as a group? Because this is a new group, and it will take time for those relationships to build and to develop, and that sense of being together. So it'll be interesting just to see how they respond to the disappointment of being beaten by Glentoran at home last weekend.
Coleraine are still in the mix, of course they are. We've talked about Linfield there. Undoubtedly, they're still title favourites by all the bookmakers, and they're the reigning champions. But I wanted to touch upon Larne, because they're dark horses, and nobody's really mentioned them, but they're winning games.
Well, no one other than you and I, Keith, and I've got to say to our absent friend today, Mr. Beacom, we have been talking about particularly the contribution that Gary Havern has made since coming in. Interesting comments from Nathan Rooney with regards to how he put various things in place which would allow Larne to kick on. I'm not exactly sure how to interpret that, because in terms of foundation and processes and all of that went on, I would have thought Tiernan Lynch was the master craftsman in that. I'm not saying that Nathan didn't make a contribution, but interesting to read what he said. But putting that to the side, Larne have done extraordinarily well. We were on record as saying that what they did last year in terms of getting second, given the demands of Europe, was absolutely phenomenal. What they did in Europe, and this is where you've got to give Nathan, credit. While he was manager, they did tremendously well. But since Nathan's departure, Larne have kicked on. What is it? Six wins and 6 clean sheets, and they are looking so impressive. And no wonder maybe the new owners are not doing anything, or just leaving it as it is. I suppose, on a personal point of view, for just the respect that maybe goes along with it, I would love them just to say, Gary, take the job on now. You're now the man in charge until such times. But Larne have done tremendously well. Read Stephen Baxter's comments at the weekend. Obviously, Carrick went there, gave as good as they got. But Inver Park is beginning to come like that fortress again. They had this ridiculous home record in terms of games won and goals conceded, and they're beginning to get that mojo back about themselves.
Thanks for watching BelTel Football. If you'd like to learn more about all things Irish League, don't forget to subscribe to the Belfast Telegraph YouTube channel.